the sanctity, the purity of the whole process leading up to the point an MP is elected. And we have a real big problem with this. Now, the thumbnail of this live stream here is Election Truth on Trial. Why am I the only one talking about this? We'll come to that in a moment. Live, the 16th of October. The actual title is Graham Moore's Historic Court Battle, The Future of Democracy is on Trial. And it is very much. Now, those of you who are just new to this story, I will run over it, briefly up until this point to bring you up to speed. Graham Moore, this is a picture of him here, is the chairman of the English Constitution Society and the leader of the English Constitution Party. And what this whole thing centres around is the by-election at Runcorn and Helsby, which, of course, was won by Sarah Pochin. And you can see her here in a picture with Zaya Youssef when they were on the campaign trail. I kind of doctored that picture just to take the piss a little bit at the time, as you can see. So that's Sarah Pochin. Now, the problem is Sarah Pochin didn't win initially. She won on a recount, only by 6 votes. 6 votes. You know, they bundle them in piles of 50. Graham only got 50 votes. So, in effect, he lost. And it's very important to understand this before we go any further. Graham never expected to win. It was all about getting the voice of England out there into the electoral system, out into the open, getting people to know about England. And we will come to that again in a little while. But why is there a problem with 50 votes? As I already said, they bundle them in piles of 50, staple them, job done. Well, a decade ago, Graham stood in another by-election. It was in Tooting when Mr. Khan kind of vacated the seat because he had other ideas about our capital city. And in that area, Graham got, once again, 50 votes. I hear you say, so what? Don't be such a sore loser. Get a life and all the other tropes I've heard. Well, the problem being, a member of the Royal College of Statisticians has got involved. And the chances of getting 50 votes in 2 separate elections, in 2 separate constituencies, a decade apart, with 2 completely separate demographics, are 1,000,000 to 1. 1,000,000 to 1, think about that. So that on its own indicates a problem. He stood in elections in between and he's got 1,000 votes here, a couple of hundred there, and so on and so on and so on. And you can see all this. It's a matter of public record. But 50 votes and 50 votes, it's an issue. So that does show straight away that, again, there's Sarah Pochin. Potentially, there is a problem. Now, the Representation of the People's Act clearly states that if you have a problem with an election, be it you're someone that stood in an election or you're someone that voted in an election, which is very important that you vote, you have the right to call for an election petition, which basically says, I believe that there were problems with this vote, with this election. It needs to be looked at. And that's what Graham did, because there was obvious impropriety at this election. And there was in another place as well, and at least one other besides that. But what you have to understand is this is inbuilt into our system. It's been going on for decades. All the while, we don't get free and fair elections. It doesn't matter whether Advance Reform or anyone else come along. If it's predetermined, there's the problem. I want to show you a slide here. Parliament loses its sovereignty when returning officers and their teams appoint MPs through cheating. The electors of a constituency are the true sovereigns, and the Commons is their domain. Once this principle is violated, even once, Parliament's sovereignty is lost. If you are not part of society's governance, you're a slave. Communists do not want you to vote. Think about it. Anyone that tells you not to vote is collaborating with the enemy. So what we're trying to say here is that if you vote and your vote obviously doesn't count, then parliamentary sovereignty can't be a thing, because at the end of the day, sovereignty is with the people. I don't give a stuff what they say. We vote for them. We are sovereign. We are lending that sovereignty to them in our vote. And if the returning officer, by virtue of the fact they mess about, decides who's going to be returned as the MP, then we're getting shafted. So you can see, or you can start to see, there is an underlying problem here. Now, this thing is a list of our common law rights under the English Constitution. Yes, the English have their own constitution. And one of those, item 14, that election of members of Parliament ought to be free. Well, if they're cheating, they're not free. This here is all of our rights. A whole list of them. The election of members of Parliament ought to be free. And you had things like the Magna Carta, observance of due process of law. That's what Mel Wilcox should have got. The Petition of Right, Declaration of Rights, 1688. Bill of Rights, Coronation Oath, Crown and Parliament Recognition Act, Act of Settlement, United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, and the Union with Scotland, Union with England. Those are all constitution. And it don't work right if that basic underlying thing, free and fair elections, is being undermined. Graham is in a unique position where he took this whole thing to court. By the way, here's me and Graham at a seminar that he delivered in Leigh-on-Sea in Essex. And you can see on the walls behind us there all of the various parts that make up the English Constitution. This man has been studying and reading English law for at least the last 30 years. And in my mind, it's an absolute bloody travesty that no one talks to him. Why? Because in that brain of his is an awful lot of knowledge that can solve an awful lot of our problems. And he is the only one that I know of to successfully take the government to court and get granted an injunction. So we're not playing games here. We're certainly not playing games. This is the crux of it. In the High Court of Justice, King's Bench Division, in the matter of the Representation of the People Act, 1983, and in the matter of a parliamentary by-election of the Runcorn and Helsby constituency, held on the 1st of May 2025 between Graham Harry Moore, Sarah Pochin. She's a beneficiary of what's happened. She was returned as the MP. That's why she's listed. And Stephen Young, the returning officer, who could be in a whole world of shit. Take notice that the trial of the above-mentioned petition will take place at Chester Crown Court, the Castle Chester, on the between the 3rd and the 5th of November this year, so the back end of the year. And the hearing on each day will commence at 10:30. Now, what basically happens is judges, very senior, very high-level judges, go to that area, convene a court, and then evidence is heard. And what could happen? You could either have a nullification of that election, a full individual ballot recount, or some other outcome, or Graham loses. They are very worried. They are very worried because what has happened, they've had an expedited appeal granted to them. which is going to be held at the Royal Courts of Justice. This is me outside the Royal Courts of Justice with Noel Wilcox when I went up there to support him. This is where all the big cases are heard in London. On the 16th of this month, so mere days from now, we have the appeal being heard 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. And that is at the Royal Courts of Justice Court of Appeal Civil Division. And this appeal is on behalf of the returning officer and Sarah Poaching. Graham will be in attendance, and what Graham has sent me today, he sent me his skeleton argument, which you have to produce before you go into these things. It's 23 pages in length. So he's not playing, he's not messing about. This is the law. This is the law of the land. Now, I want to pass a critique, really, of people with a mouth who can draw attention to this matter, because I don't think people realise how very bloody serious this matter is. Because when you go to the appeal court, and there are witnesses to this impropriety, and show that we have a problem, it will then go to Chester, and it will then be shown we have a problem. This could bring into question elections all over the country. Hell, it could even bring down the government. That's how serious, that's how important this is. GB News doesn't talk about it. BBC doesn't talk about it. ITV doesn't talk about it. Sky News doesn't talk about it. In fact, the entire mainstream media do not talk about it. Why? Because they're part of the establishment and they don't want this to see air the time of day, because they know if Graham gets the public interest which this deserves, the whole affair will come crashing down. I'm disappointed in what you would class as alternative media. One thing I've always found with alternative media is that we will lend a voice to things that the mainstream media will not. So far, I am the only one that seems to be talking about this, banging my drum, standing up and saying, "Oi, you need to pay attention to this. This is very serious." Nobody I've seen online is giving this the attention I am. It needs to have the attention. There's 247 of you watching this right now. If you haven't done so, share it on your social media. If you were able to, on the 16th, that's this Thursday, get your ass to the court. We need to absolutely pack out that gallery, and we need to show the world, we need to show the court, we need to show the system there is public interest in this, because it not only affects that election, it affects every other election that we've had in recent memory and anything going forward. If we have a chance to change this, it has to be now and it has to be right. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Have a look at this. The returning officer could at any time have ordered an individual ballot recount. He chose instead to challenge at every opportunity. He used council tax funds to do that. Now, a returning officer, and you can find their job description online, one of the responsibilities they have is that they can order a full ballot recount. You don't have to go through all this bullshit. They can say, right, there's a problem here, recount the whole lot. Their salary is paid for from your council tax. All of this legality will be paid for from your council tax. If they'd have done the right thing, there wouldn't have been any of this. Let's be real, Sarah Poaching will probably win by a lot more than 6 votes if there is a recount. But the point is, it has to be right. Otherwise, what's the point? Now, to get some idea of the cheat, I want to play a video from Graham Moore himself. which really reveals what's going on. There is a very slight pause at the beginning of this where I cocked up the screen grab, but it's very vitally important you understand this and share it.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Yes, it's me, Graham Moore, otherwise known as Daddy Dragon, the president of the English Constitution Society and the leader of the English Constitution Party. I need to explain a very, very quick explanation of what's going on and what we're highlighting in court. We need to get the 3rd and 4th and 5th of November 2025 is the election hearing. 2 High Court judges travel from London to Chester to listen to 4 people's evidence, 5 people's evidence, that the election is a fraud. The election is a sleight of hand. I want you to understand something. Imagine a magician, and the magician has magicians' helpers, assistants, the magician's assistants. They're all part of that illusion in distracting the public from what they're actually doing, right? Which is sleight of hand, right? Many of those magicians' tricks, and you can confirm this by looking online, are patented and protected. So, because there's an intellectual property right to the magician's illusion, that's how he earns his money. That's how the magician's assistants earn their money. Imagine taking that principle and put it into an election where the returning officer is the magician, where the count officers that he brings into the fold are all trained in the illusion. And the illusion of election is where they count the votes, big stack like that. They then have, say, 50 votes, and then they put, let's say the Conservative Party are there, 50 votes. And then they put a Labour one there and a Labour one there. They clip it as a bundle. It looks like 50 votes for the Labour Party, right? It's not. It's 50 votes for the Conservatives, but they've just put them straight into their bundles. That is the illusion. Where does that happen? It happens in the place in the centre of the count, not on the edge, but on the centre, where the count agents can't see the sleight of hand. It's the same, that method of operation, and it is an MO of how a fraud is perpetrated on the people. When you get that situation happening, and by the way, it's happening all over the country, right, and various other different, but the actual method of operation of the fraud or the illusion is the same. So think of a magician and the way in which they create an illusion, you'll go, whoa, right? The returning officer is doing the same thing. Instead, he is the magician of the election. And what he's doing is highly illegal. That's what you've got to look for. And many people have spotted it. We're the only people to take it forward with 4 witnesses that are going to say, we saw that, right? Then their illusion is broken, right? And once it's broken, everyone knows this is how they have created the red wall in the north of England. Not by the opinion of the people, not by the people giving their vote freely in a free election, but by the returning officer, sleight of hand, like a magician, telling people and appointing their own MP, right? Because it's no longer the representative of the people, it's the representative of the returning officer. And that's what you've got to understand. This is no minor case, right? It's an illusion. We're showing you what the illusion is. We are spelling out the method of operation in that court hearing. We're the only people to do it because they put all of these blocks in a way. That's why the 16th of October, 2025, when the returning officer and Sarah Pouchin are trying to block this case on the minorest of minor technicalities. And it's for you to stand there and say, we want to listen to this election hearing, we want to see the evidence, and we want to hear the count agents and the candidate explain how this fraud works. And then it blows apart the illusion of democracy. Thank you.
There you go. I hope that was clear. But just to reiterate, you get a bundle of 50 votes, say, for the Conservatives. What they do, they stick a Labour one on the top and a Labour one on the bottom, staple it off and throw it in their pile. So it's got, oh, yeah, 50 Labour votes, done. And they're not, they're 50 Tory votes. That is what is happening, large scale, all over the place. So to that regard, your vote doesn't decide who gets in. This needs blowing out of the water. And again, I go back to the fact that I seem to be the only one out there talking about this very serious problem. No one else is. 296 of you in the live right now. You need to realize this is a very, very serious problem. If you are in London, if you are able to get yourself to London on the 16th, and the hearing starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, we need to get as many bums on seats as we possibly can. If you know anybody important in positions of authority, there's a couple of politicians I know I have contact with. We need as many people there as possible because this affects everybody. Now, they always talk about British. They always talk about Britain and everything else. They never talk about England. They never talk about the English. And the reason is there's a lot of constitutional stuff, we'll call it, which could mend all of this. Constitutional stuff which they have to abide by. Now, one of the things I want to show you is this screen here. This is the Bill of Rights, 1688. And you can find all this stuff off of the government website. And this is your rights, basically. Your rights. So when they talk about ECHR and all the rest of it, it's utter shite. You've already got rights. And if we scroll down to the bottom somewhere, freedom of election. Election of members of Parliament ought to be free. That's free and fair, people. Free and fair. And that's not happening. And that's what this actual hearing is about. That's what this whole thing is about. And where's the other thing? For the redress of all grievances and for the amending, strengthening and preserving of the laws, parliaments ought to be held frequently. So frequently we have those elections, we have our parliaments, and again, they don't appear to be free and fair right now. I hear people as well very often say, we don't have an English constitution. Yes, we bloody well do. I want to show you something. This is the Journals of the House of Commons, volume 49. That stuff that's highlighted in yellow talks about the English Constitution. And you can see a little bit down there, the Constitution of England says it in black and white. A little bit more there. And you can see the date, 1794, for crying out loud. 1794. All this stuff is in place. It's still active and it's still very much in existence. And it is being trodden on, usurped and destroyed every single day of every single month of every single year. Common law, constitution. We share the same things with Wales. This is big, folks. This is massive. And again, why isn't the mainstream media talking about it? Why are alternative media channels not talking about it? 16th is D-Day. We need as many people there. If nobody turned up, oh, there's no public interest, we'll just give this guy a bit, shove him under the carpet. No, we need to pack that gallery out, and we need the upper gallery opened and pack that out as well. We need as many people there as we can. 16th of this month, and that is literally a few days from now.